everybody. Welcome to Breaking Points. Emily, great to see you, my friend.
It's great to be here. I was really focused on my Twitter feed when we started, so that's why I was hunched over.
Focused, getting the latest so we can bring you all of the breaking news updates. Sagar is actually recording with Andrew Schultz for the Flagrant podcast, so that's why he is out today. Bunch of announcements to get to. Okay. Tomorrow we are not having our normal show. Instead, we are doing a live stream for the State of the Union, which I cannot believe is actually tomorrow.
It's not technically a State of the Union,
it's the joint address to Congress, whatever. But yes. It's the State of the Union. And I've been in kind of denial about it. Like, it just really, there's been so much going on. It snuck up on me.
It's crazy, but we'll all be here. Gang will all be here.
That is right. We will all be here. 8 p.m. Eastern, we'll start the live stream. I think the president is supposed to speak around 9, so we'll talk about whatever's going on beforehand, preview the speech, listen to the speech, react on the other end, as we normally do. In addition, another big personal announcement. Happy birthday to my baby girl, Ella, who is 17.
Amazing.
I am in total, complete denial about this as well.
I'm in denial that you have a 17-year-old and look this amazing.
Oh, stop.
Can't be real, Krystal.
Stop. Trust me, I feel every day and then some of my age, but I am, she's beautiful, amazing, so proud of her, and it's an incredible thing. And one last thing before we jump into the news, congratulations to the filmmakers behind No Other Land, who won the Oscar for Best Documentary last night. Documentary by an Israeli and a Palestinian about life in the occupied West Bank. Incredible speech that they gave talking about, the need for peace and to coexist and calling for effectively a one-state solution with no supremacy, decrying ethnic cleansing. Huge applause at the Oscars over this. And the crazy thing about it is, this is now an Oscar award-winning documentary. Could not find a U.S. distributor because this was too controversial, quote unquote.
I wonder what will happen now, actually.
Yeah, you think they'll get picked up?
It's possible. It's kind of late, but it's possible.
Yeah.
People sense there's money to be made if anyone's curious about the film.
True.
Which people are.
Maybe capitalism will prevail here.
That's right.
In the interest of the greater
Put
good.
all of your hopes in capitalism.
I don't know what else we have to put our hopes in at this point. All right, lots of news to get to. Latest fallout from Ukraine. Protests all over about various things, including against J.D. Vance on his ski trip. Elon is attacking Social Security as a Ponzi scheme on the Joe Rogan podcast. Trump is announcing a digital asset reserve that is just a way to funnel taxpayer dollars to crypto billionaires. One of the most disgusting things I've truly ever seen. Dems have a brilliant new plan to fight back, which entails going even harder in the direction of big donors and sidelining grassroots donors altogether. Unbelievable that this is what's being proposed. Bill Burr is fighting with Ben Shapiro. That's an interesting one over his comments regarding Luigi Mangione. And Israel is quitting the ceasefire deal and announcing a new blockade and siege of Gaza, obvious collective punishment and war crime, with the full backing of the United States government. Jeremy Scahill is going to join us to break all of that down.
Yeah, excited to have Jeremy here.
Yeah, he's incredible. And Dropsite, I said this last week. It is incredible how quickly they became essential.
Seriously.
I really rely on them for their foreign affairs reporting in particular, specifically with regard to Israel and Gaza. But they have done such an incredible job standing that outlet up.
And of course, neither of us is surprised because we know Ryan.
We know Ryan, yes.
They're so talented.
Exactly right. All right, so let's get into the latest with regard to Ukraine. I'm sure you guys have all seen at this point the dust-up in the Oval Office between J.D. Vance and Trump attacking Vladimir Zelensky, of course, the president of Ukraine. Let's go ahead and take a listen to, we had a bunch of politicians on the Sunday show, from Marco Rubio to Senator Chris Murphy, who were reacting to this chain of events. Let's go ahead and listen to that.
Heard from President Zelensky. He said he does not think that he owes President Trump an apology for what happened inside the Oval Office today. Do you feel otherwise?
I do, because you guys don't see. You guys only saw the end. You saw what happened today. You don't see all the things that led up to this. So let me explain. The president's been very clear. He campaigned on this. He thinks this war should have never started. He believes, and I agree, that had he been president, it never would have happened. Now here we are. He's trying to bring an end to this conflict. We've explained very clearly what our plan is here, which is we want to get the Russians to a negotiating table. We want to explore whether peace is possible. They understand this. They also understand that this agreement that was supposed to be signed today was supposed to be an agreement that binds America economically to Ukraine, which to me, as I've explained, and I think the president alluded to today, is a security guarantee in its own way, because we're involved. It's now us. It's our interests. That was all explained. That was all understood. And nonetheless, for the last 10 days, in every engagement we've had with the Ukrainians, there's been complications in getting that point across, including the public statements that President Zelensky has made. But they insisted on coming to D.C. This agreement could have been signed 5 days ago, but they insisted on coming to Washington. And there was and should have been a very clear understanding. Don't come here and create a such scenario where you're going to start lecturing us about how diplomacy isn't going to work. President Zelensky took it in that direction, and it ended in a predictable outcome as a result. It's unfortunate. That wasn't supposed to be this way, but that's the path he chose. And I think, frankly, sends his country backwards in regards to achieving peace, which is what President Trump wants at the end of the day, is for this war to end.
The person who walked away from the table yesterday was President Zelensky. I mean, I've been involved in a lot of bilateral meetings like this with heads of state and dignitaries. There's a certain protocol to these events, but for him to act as he did was rather shocking to everyone. I mean, President Zelensky, instead of showing gratitude, he interrupted and berated his hosts at a very perilous time for his country. He should have been anxious, I think, to enter into this agreement. Think of it. The Mineral Rights Agreement would be a win-win for both countries. It would give us an economic interest there, and everyone around the world knows that America will always defend our interest and our people.
The challenge is now we're at a stalemate. This is a World War I-like trench warfare, and it is best to be able to get to at least a pause. And what I hear President Trump saying over and over again is we need to get to a stop in fighting, find some resolution. I understand Zelensky is rightfully concerned that Putin has violated every single agreement he's ever signed and that he can't be trusted. He's looking for some kind of security guarantees, which the French and the UK are saying they want to put troops in. But we need to get these two folks at the table, get to some kind of resolution to something that may look like North and South Korea for a long time, and have a line where people are looking at each other, but not an active war.
The White House has become an arm of the Kremlin. Every single day, you hear from the National Security Advisor, from the President of the United States, from his entire national security team, Kremlin talking points. For the last week, the White House has been pretending as if Ukraine started this war. That's essentially saying that Poland invaded Germany at the beginning of World War II. There are still facts in this world. And the fact is this: Vladimir Putin is a brutal dictator. Russia started this war. And the entire pretext for that meeting yesterday was an attempt to rewrite history in order to sign a deal with Putin that hands Putin Ukraine. That is disastrous for U.S. national security. That means that China will be on the march. Putin may not stop. America may be at war with a nuclear power.
So there you go, a little sampling of the political reaction. Obviously I have a lot of thoughts on this, which I'll go ahead and offer a few of them since we haven't had a chance to react yet. I mean, it won't surprise you that none of the Democrat or Republican views there really represent my view. I do actually think that this was a sort of a planned ambush of Zelensky. Because I think it's preposterous to imagine that J.D. Vance would be out there freelancing on his own. Like, I don't think he does anything without Donald Trump giving him the nudge and the go-ahead. But whether or not you think this was like a planned ambush, it was definitely a show in that it is not reflective of the reality, which is that Ukraine and U.S. in this war have basically been the same entity, right? The U.S. has pushed Ukraine to continue this war. We have used Ukraine prior to this war as our own geopolitical plaything. So that's why when Vance and Trump are insisting, oh, you have to thank us and you need to apologize. Like, thank us for what? For continuing to drag you through years of this war at massive cost of lives and death and destruction in the country of Ukraine. And this is not to let Zelensky off the hook, who no one should be, hero worshiping this guy. Like, actually, the things that J.D. Vance said about the conscription and pulling guys off, that is true. But we're the superpower in this situation. We wanted to use Ukraine to push back against Russia, and we failed. And now we are left trying to figure out what to do next and trying to pick up the pieces. What the Trump administration wants to do is basically economic colonization. They want this extractive mineral rights deal, which, by the way, doesn't mean that you are going to benefit from whatever extraction is occurring here. It's Trump's billionaire buddies who would get these deals, who would profit from exploiting this vassal state and effective colony of the United States of America. but it would be U.S. lives that would be on the line to defend those economic interests. That's the deal that they're trying to put in place. And by the way, Emily, it wouldn't surprise me, like this was a big blow up, and I don't want to say that like it's not going to have an impact. It might, but it's also very possible it doesn't at all, that they continue to go forward with this economic colonization deal for Trump and his buddies to cash in, because as we're going to talk to you about the like crypto reserve bullshit, the core ideological project of the Trump administration at this point just seems to be theft. Elon stealing contracts and just like plundering the government at will, going around the world saying, we want Greenland's minerals, we want the Panama Canal back, we want Canada, we want Gaza, we want the Ukrainian minerals deal. The crypto, I mean, that thing is just insane, just like funneling taxpayer dollars in so that a bunch of crypto billionaires can sell their bag and dump this trash, like worthless thing on the American public. That is the core ethos of the Trump administration. And so it would not surprise me at all if they continue forward with this. It's not even just rare earth minerals. It's like 50% of the entire country that we're pushing, this deal for. So that's kind of my overall reaction here to what happened. But it does drive me sort of insane, this insist, the Ukrainians need to apologize and Zelensky was out of line, et cetera, et cetera. Like, we are so much to blame for the way this has all unfolded. And not just the Biden administration, by the way, where they do have a lot of blame on their shoulders, in particular for blocking those original negotiations that had a shot at securing some sort of a peace here early on. But Trump, in this dialogue, he brags about how he was shipping the javelins to Ukraine. He was part of this belligerent posture that precipitates this war. And Russia is responsible for their own actions. They should not have invaded. It was an illegal invasion. They have their own imperial project that they are engaged in. But let's not ignore the role that the U.S. has played in meddling in Ukrainian politics with a coup d'etat, with expansion of NATO, with continuing this belligerent posture that helps to create the conditions that precipitate this war. And to just erase all of that and pretend like none of that happened, and Trump himself is not to blame, and it's all Zelensky's fault, and he's the real aggressor here, and he needs to thank us, I think is so disgusting and utterly preposterous.
So Zelensky wants everything that you just outlined, which is like the point you made about how American boots would essentially have to be on the ground for a security guarantee with the quote economic colonization. Zelensky wants that. That's the entire dust up over this deal. We played Chris Murphy just there. Chris Murphy, before Zelensky went into that meeting, was bragging about how Democratic senators had just met with him and encouraged him not to sign, what did he say, like a false security deal, something that Chris Murphy tweeted, because Zelensky doesn't believe that the quote economic colonization is enough. He thinks that the United States needs to have like an actual security guarantee. Otherwise, Putin will continue to, what's the word that often gets used, steamroll, will keep like creeping further and further into Ukraine. So the option then for us is either to have like an actual boots on the ground security guarantee or some half measure, or totally given to Putin. And the options are insane. Like, it's just a complete mess. And it's a mess because of the tack that Zelensky and his supporters had wanted. David Frum, for example, like these types of guys have wanted over and over and over again for years. So, I mean, I think the Zelensky must apologize stuff is a little precious from like a moral standpoint, but from a pragmatic standpoint, what he just did was prolong, likely, I mean, I think the deal probably will still go through, but he just prolonged the suffering and the war. It's pretty tough. This is Zelensky, this is A2. This is him responding. He went on Brett Baer's show right after, I mean, this was a couple hours after, he canceled the planned speech, I think it was at the Hudson Institute, and then went straight to the Fox News studio, went through with the Baer interview, and this is a clip of Zelensky from that.
So I'm not hearing from you, Mr. President, a thought that you owe the president an apology.
No, I respect President and I respect American people. And if, I don't know, if I think that we have to be very open and very honest. And I'm not sure that we did something bad. I think maybe sometimes some things we have to discuss out of media, with all respect to democracy and to a free media. But there are things where we have to understand the position of Ukraine and Ukrainians. And I think that is the most important thing.
So the $100 billion into the war, I just don't think that lands especially well with the American people. And I'm not saying, Krystal, that he needs to like get on his knees and apologize, though I think pragmatically, if he wanted that deal to go through, he probably would. That's like, $100 billion to the American people. It's like multiple times the annual NASA budget. It's multiple times, or it's at this point, it's over the annual budget of the state of Virginia. Like, well, it's a lot of money. I get that it's a small percentage of everything that we spend in a given year, but in order to create a political incentive structure, a permission structure for politicians to continue going along with it, and I guess I see what people are saying about the apology, but it doesn't, I don't think we need to be precious about it morally. From a pragmatic standpoint, he immediately started tweeting, "We're so thankful for America. We're so thankful for the cooperation of the United States," et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, listen, again, I do think this was a setup, because if you watch the video, like, the thing he said was not, everyone's, he was berating them and lecturing. He just said, listen, guys, like, Putin is not really a person that, like, if you look at the historical track record, this isn't someone you can just take their word for. True. Absolutely true. And then J.D. Vance jumps in, well, you have never said thank you, and you take people on propaganda tours, et cetera, et cetera. I think it was a show. I think it was a show for domestic consumption, because they know the base has been trained to, like, have this conflict completely sort of reversed in their head, where Ukraine are the great evil and the great bad guys. And so he knew it would play well with his base, and that he would look like a tough guy. And then that gives Trump room to sort of do whatever it is that he ultimately wants to do and strike whatever deal that he wants to, and not face blowback from his base. That's what I really think was going on there. So this insistence, he needs to apologize, he needs to thank us. I also just have to say, on like really zooming out of what you think about this conflict and these players and how this should all go down and what the geopolitics are, et cetera, I think there was a really visceral human reaction of disgust to the way that these two very powerful individuals were badgering and bullying someone who's there, who speaks English as a second language, who, is totally unable to sort of be able to compete in this debate because of the way that is stacked against, the cards are stacked against him in that situation, when you have two people, very powerful, berating someone who is, just trying to keep up with the language issue. I think there was like a visceral, it's been interesting to see how vociferous the response has been online. And I think there was just like a visceral ick factor to the way all of that went down. So, the other piece of this that could be consequential is how the Europeans react here. You had Keir Starmer, who seems to be trying to take the lead to say, all right, well, clearly we cannot rely on the U.S. for anything, which I think actually that part is good, that they're realizing, listen, these people are really not our allies at this point. We can't count on them whatsoever for a single thing. So he's trying to take the lead. He was on the BBC talking about how he's now talking to France and some others to try to work on some sort of a peace plan that they could present. Let's take a listen to how that went.
We had quite a long time with President Zelensky, then President Macron and President Trump on the phone. We've now agreed that the United Kingdom, along with France and possibly one or two others, will work with Ukraine on a plan to stop the fighting. And then we'll discuss that plan with the United States. So in those calls on Friday night, through the meeting yesterday, into the calls again last night, I think we've got a step in the right direction, because as I say, nobody wants to see what happened on Friday, but it's really important that we keep our central focus, which is lasting peace in Ukraine. Nobody wants any more bloodshed.
So we'll see what comes of that. There were all kinds of European leaders that were tweeting out their support of Zelensky in the wake of all of these events. And put the next piece up on the screen. I really sort of think that the tension here within the Trump administration comes down to whether they want to just go pure, naked exploitation, as they have in so many other arenas, as I was pointing out before with the minerals deal, or whether they want to align with the, right-wing authoritarian regime of Russia, which is the other ideological project of the Trump administration, is to align the country more with those regimes that are closer to their own ideological valence. And, this is interesting to me, sort of point in the direction of they're going to probably continue in the direction of the minerals deal. But we'll see, because you never know with Trump. He's quoting someone else who said, now Zelensky will have no choice but to back down and accept Trump's terms. But here's the genius part. Trump is actually protecting Ukraine without dragging the U.S. into war. By negotiating a mineral deal, Trump ensures Americans will be involved in Ukraine's mining industry. That prevents Russia from launching an invasion because attacking Ukraine would mean endangering American lives, something that would force the U.S. to respond. Then goes on, Trump played both sides like a master chess player. In the end, Zelensky will have no choice but to concede, blah, blah, blah. But, to me, the fact that Trump took the time to put this out on Truth Social, indicating that, okay, the idea here is to go forward with this rare earths mineral deal, which, by the way, includes many things other than that. And then that's going to serve as its own sort of security guarantee so that the billionaires will get their bag out of Ukraine by exploiting that country. And then, that security guarantee will make sure that Russia doesn't further invade the country. That to me was an indication perhaps that's still the direction that he's moving in.
Well, here's what's interesting, and here's why I kind of disagree that this was an ambush. Zelensky comes in and says at the beginning of the meeting, because I went back and read the transcript, that he's hopeful about this deal, that this deal is the first step in the right direction. And then what we find out is he actually believes that that the deal in and of itself is not a good enough security guarantee for the people of Ukraine. And for Zelensky, by the way, I mean, as someone who was horrified by Zelensky's conduct in that meeting, I shouldn't say horrified, that overstates it because it wasn't surprising, but was disgusted with Zelensky's conduct in that meeting. I also don't blame him because he has his own interests. He's watched so many of his own people die. He has watched his cities be destroyed, despite the fact that he corrected Trump and said that was Russian propaganda to say that Ukrainian cities had been destroyed. Not all of them have. Some of them are flattened, and that's what Trump was talking about. So I get that. I think from Zelensky's perspective, he does have his own interests. He has his own people to worry about. He is, he is the representative of his own people.
Yeah.
At the same time, the question then becomes, well, was he sitting there saying that this deal is great and then always intending to not end up signing it? They could have signed it in Kyiv. They could have signed it in other places. He flies here. Was he not going to sign this if he didn't get something else out of Trump and Vance? And when Zelensky turned to Vance, it felt like Zelensky had this a very organic and natural tension. Again, from his point of view, as somebody who lives in Ukraine and who's overseeing this war and seeing the suffering of the Ukrainian people, he says, Putin has steamrolled. He's made all of these agreements. You can't do diplomacy with Putin. Turns the question to J.D. Vance. That, to me, if I were J.D. Vance, I would have exploded too. Being challenged in front of the American media by the president, I would have lost my mind. I'm not saying it was helpful, but I would have lost my mind if I were him, because it's actually the only option at this point. And by Zelensky's own admission, he was saying the deal was good, 30 minutes before when the press conference started. I had more, my reaction was closer to Sagar's because I was traveling and I saw the clips first. And when I saw the last 10 minutes, I was like, oh my gosh, what just happened? And then I went back and I watched it from the beginning. I was like, Zelensky keeps throwing jabs at Trump. And it's again, I get why he would, because he doesn't think this is enough. And he's seen examples before of why it's not enough. But his solution is more like Clinton, Bush-style American imperialism. And it's just Trump is caught in the middle of that. And it doesn't mean that Trump's solution is genius. I'm not a big fan of the economic colonization mineral deal. But Zelensky did not do himself any favors, that's for sure. I just did not see it that way at all. It's interesting because it's been sort of a Rorschach test. Yeah, because and again, I'm not a Zelensky stan, right? He does have his own interest. And it is like I said, the things J.D. Vance said about, people being pulled off the show, we've covered that on this show. And at this point, at the beginning of the war, including when we were pushing them to, walk away from the negotiations, which he was participating in. I mean, this is what drives me crazy is the complete attempt to rewrite history and absolve ourselves of our role in this, absolve Trump of his role in helping to bring about this horrific war and this horrific situation where you're right, there are no good options at this point. Yeah, truly, there are no good options at this point. But, the attempt to rewrite history is crazy making to me. But in addition, to point out hey, this guy's not the most trustworthy actor. I don't see why that makes you explode.
what would make me explode is the insanity of pretending like we had nothing to do with this situation, and now you're going to have to just take it, and you owe us a thank you. A thank you for what? We owe you an apology for what we have done to this country and the way we have used it as a plaything. And again,
but Zelensky wants that. That's the difference. Okay, I would apologize to the average Ukrainian, but to Zelensky.
That's what I was going to say about Zelensky is, you know, at the beginning when we were pushing, let's not have these negotiations, actually the Ukrainian people were very much as we can tell from the polling, et cetera, and from I think this is maybe the most telling sign, the number of military signups there were and recruits at that point where people were volunteering like, yes, I want to be part of this war. The Ukrainian people were behind, we want to fight, and, you know, the U.S. is, oh, we're all in with you and we're going to be there, you know, standing with you and giving you everything you need, et cetera. That sentiment has very much changed, which is why, you know, Zelensky's approval has fallen. Now, I think his approval, we don't really know, but his approval rating appears to be higher than Trump's is in our own country. So it's not like he has no support, but certainly his approval rating has fallen. There is massive fatigue among the population. That's why they had to lower the conscription age. I mean, didn't have to, but decided to lower the conscription age. That's why they've been, you know, aggressively basically like kidnapping men off the streets, banning men from leaving the country, et cetera. So, you know, the public sentiment within Ukraine is now diverging somewhat from Zelensky and where he wants things to be. That being said,
except for maybe since Friday when the country's like rallying.
That's what I was going to say. That being said, you know, since this dust-up occurred, I do think it has probably strengthened his domestic political position because even the opposition has come out in support of him and in opposition to the way that this was handled by Trump and Vance, et cetera. So, you know, again, my bottom line here is whether you think it was an ambush or not, I genuinely do. But, you know, I think reasonable people could disagree there, as Emily and Sauter certainly disagree with me on that. The part of it that drives me crazy is just the fakery of ignoring how and why we got here, of pretending we played no role, and pretending also like we're oppositional to Zelensky. Like, we are on the same team. This is like Mississippi having a, you know, international affairs disagreement with the federal government. And that's what I mean when I say this is a show, because it is not reflective of the actual reality of the conditions that led to this war, of the conditions that led us to exactly this point. And so, you know, we'll see what the fallout is and if it changes any of the dynamics. But, you know, as of now, I think probably Trump is probably still pushing in the direction of this minerals deal because it's very consistent with the rest of his foreign policy that he's pursuing around the world, which is just, you know, a smash and grab. Like, I want and again, I think it's really important for people to understand this exploitation of Ukraine or conquest of Greenland or Panama Canal or Canada or whatever, like, these deals are not to benefit you. There's a reason why the AI Gaza video has like a Trump hotel there. This is to benefit billionaires, the Trump family themselves, their buddies around the world, and to secure those economic interests for themselves using the U.S. taxpayer and the U.S. soldier to protect those economic interests. And it's not like that's a new dynamic, right? I'm not Pollyanna here. I'm not naive. I'm not saying this is our first trip to the, you know, economic colonization rodeo, but
that's a hell of a rodeo.
It's been a hell of a ride, let me tell you.
He is more nakedly transactional.
He is more nakedly transactional about it. There is not even a valence of this is about democracy, this is about human rights, this is about standing up for ourselves, this is about protecting territorial integrity. It's just about we're going to get what we can get out of it. And again, not us, him and his buddies and the other billionaires that he's close to. And it was billionaires that originally proposed this who had direct interest in, you know, exploitation in Ukraine, who proposed this deal. So I think there's a lot of incentives still pushing in that direction. But like I said, the oppositional force is wanting to align more closely with their ideological brethren in Russia. So we'll see how this all goes down. The last piece of fallout here, put A5 up on the screen. So this was kind of interesting just in terms of the global pushback. There was a Norwegian fuel supplier that refused to refuel U.S. warships over this dust-up in the White House. This is a Norwegian fuel company, Haltbach Bunkers, announced it will cease supplying fuel to U.S. military forces in Norway and American ships docking in Norwegian ports, citing dissatisfaction with recent U.S. policy towards Ukraine. In a strongly worded statement, the company criticized a televised event involving U.S. President Trump and J.D. Vance, referring to it as, quote, the biggest shit show ever presented on live TV. They praised Zelensky for his restraint, accused the U.S. of putting on a backstabbing TV show, and declaring that the spectacle made us sick. So kind of an interesting economic retaliation there.
At least we put on great TV shows. That's my takeaway.
Do we
One
though?
thing you can't take away from Donald Trump, Celebrity Apprentice. Incredible.
Was not a watcher. But I believe you. I believe you.
It was good. It was good.
I mean, listen, the man is freaking, he's funny. Like, he's funny, he's charismatic, he's like, that is the area where he is an absolute genius, and you can't take that away from him.
Cannot take that away from him. So at least we're in agreement on that.
Yes, we'll close with that agreement.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.